All right. I think I am officially live now. Hello, everyone. Give you all just a second to start filing in here and everything. Who gets his live stream started on time? That's right, this guy does. It helped that I started preparing about a half an hour earlier than I actually thought I needed to. Last time I did this, oh my goodness, I was definitely throwing a lot of things together at the last minute. So I'm glad that the last one came together as well as it did, because I definitely rushed to put that one together in time. So I'll give you just a couple of minutes for people to start shuffling in and everything. Hello, everyone. This is now, I think, the fourth month that I've been doing these live streams. Also, please sound off in the chat to let me know that you can hear me just fine, um, because of course it can all look great on my end, but on your end it might look a little different. So Sonic Hill says hello, Drex and everyone. Hello, Sonic Hill. Cool. So I'm gonna assume that that means that you can hear me just fine, which it's usually, God, I want to say it's like a 30-second delay, because it's like, what is it, like 15 seconds before the signal gets out to everybody. And then it's usually another few seconds before people can type things out and enter them into the chat and everything. So whenever you do these live streams, there's always this very strange delay after you solicit people's input before they are actually able to render it. Um, so yeah, this is now the fourth month we've been doing these monthly live streams. Yay! Hooray! And I want to just take one moment to thank UltraPoy for sponsoring. Oh, Joy, how you doing? I want to take a moment to thank UltraPoy for sponsoring these live streams here, because without them, I would not be diving into this territory. So make sure that you go ahead and let UltraPoy know how much you appreciate them sponsoring these live streams. Head on over to ultrapoy.com, use the code DrexFactor with a 0 instead of an O at checkout. That lets them know that I sent you. And it also Joy says today's a great day. It is a great day. It's a really warm day. This is part of the reason why my shooting setup is quite different, because there's so much ambient light outside that rather than try to screen it out and everything, I just kind of gave up and was like, nah, this is just kind of what our reality is going to be. Anyway, use the code DrexFactor with 0 instead of an O at checkout at ultrapoy.com. That lets them know that I sent you. It helps out the channel. You get your props for a discount, so everybody wins. Today, of course, I'm going to be using their Orb Poi to demonstrate everything. Why? Because these are some of my favorite LED contact poi, and I am a big fan of them. So, yeah, check them out, ultrapoi.com. Orb Poi, totally awesome. But today we are here to talk about gunslingers, because they are a thing that I use very, very commonly in my own style, and I want to see more people out there playing around with them, or at least playing around with them in the way that I do. Very, very selfish urge here, but yeah, I think there are far worse ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch us over to the full body camera here, and I'm going to go ahead and run us through my 3 tech tips for gunslingers today. And then we're going to finish off from, like, I think probably 7:30 to 8 Eastern Daytime, which is my time. So in about 25 minutes here, we'll switch over to doing Q&A, and I will answer whatever questions y'all have on whatever topics you can come up with. Or I should say, you can ask whatever questions you want, and if I feel comfortable answering them, I will give you so. And you can ask any topic you want. Could be flow arts, could be personal, could be my opinions on the affairs of the world. It could be something silly like what was the last show that I binged that I really enjoyed, which, if anybody had that question sitting in their back pocket, the answer is Young Justice, which turned out to be an absolute joy, and I'm going to have to work really hard not to Hang on, why isn't that working? Sorry, my power cord is, there it is, now it's working. I'm gonna have to work really hard not to use the slang from Young Justice because it's just so good. Season 2 with Impulse, where he's talking about like feeling the mode and using crash as a indicating a positive response and everything is just fabulous. I loved it. But anyway, that's not why most of you came here. Switch over here. Awesome sauce. Welcome to my home studio. Usually I have my backdrops down, but again, the weather's so nice that I just decided to heck with it. I'm going to show off uh, both the ambient light inside my apartment as well as these wonderful prop racks that just got hung up here and everything. So, gunslingers. Um, so I'm kind of rare in that I like doing gunslingers with contact poi. Gunslingers with contact poi is a somewhat difficult proposition um, because the poi are not evenly weighted. You basically have to maintain a death grip on the tethered, but don't let that scare you away because I think really cool things happen when you can do both. Because I personally like being able to go straight back and forth between my contact tricks and my gunslinger tricks. We can have both. I think we should have both. So, what are some things that you're going to want to keep in mind as you're learning how to do your gunslingers, and especially learning how to do your gunslingers with contact poi? Well, for those of you who were here last month, I went ahead and taught some tips on getting down spiral wraps with Meteor, and specifically being able to pause with that, because that is also something that is a hallmark of my style. But right now, I'm going to show you something that is not actually a hallmark of my style. Mainly, and there's no good reason for this other than just like I after I learned it, I didn't spend a lot of time integrating it into flow, but it's a big part of Ty Rochford's style, and I'm a big fan of Ty Rochford. And that involves being able to do gunslingers in such a way that you can pause your spiral wraps, just like we did with our meteor here. So for those of you who remember this tip from last week, you'll remember that I pointed out that the key to making this work is that you want your thumb end poi to wind up sitting on top of your hand. That is the biggest requirement you have in order to make those, I would call them spiral wrap suspensions, work. You need to have the thumb end sitting on top when all said and done. If you don't manage to land it for whatever reason, you're gonna, I mean, you can get back out of the spiral wrap, but number one, it doesn't look as clean. And ooh, number two, hang on, I need to reset the mode here. I'm feeling the mode. I got all of 10 minutes into this before I started quoting Young Justice. I'm sorry, but it's such a great show. If any of y'all are on HBO Max out there, you can stream all 3 seasons, and there's a fourth one coming, and I'm so excited about that. Anyway, so yeah, your thumb end has to wind up on top. You see how my pinky end here is just kind of hanging out down below and everything? The pinky end is not nearly as important as the thumb end. The thumb end has to come to a complete stop on top of your hand. Well, guess what? With your gunslingers, it works exactly the same way. I need to make sure that my thumb end is able to pause on top of my hand every time I get into one of these spiral wraps right here. How am I making that happen? Well, this is a tip I got from Ty, and that is quite frankly that I had to do something that I never do when I'm spinning gunslingers, which is that normally when I'm spinning gunslingers, I'm maintaining a full grip here. Do you see how I'm maintaining a grip all the way across the tether? This goes to the heart of that whole ethos about maintaining a death grip on the tether as you're spinning your gunslingers around and everything. Well, it turns out that there are some exceptions to this rule, and being able to do these suspensions with spiral wraps are one of them. Namely, what Ty showed me is that to make this work, you have to shift the grip. I'm no longer gripping it with my entire palm. I'm only pinching the tether between my thumb and the rest of my hand. What's the net effect of this? Well, basically, all of a sudden now I can hit these suspensions however I want to. I can go back and forth between the two. I can hang out, boom, and switch back and forth between them, right? Just like if I was doing my meteor spiral wraps, like so. It's just the Gunslinger equivalent thereof. So why is it so important that I do this from this grip right here? Well, let me show you what happens when I try and do it with my traditional grip where I'm maintaining a death grip on the tether here. And that is that, oh shoot, couple things. Number one, when I try and go for the wrap now, you're going to find that your fist is now essentially creating a wall that prevents you from actually catching that head. Where, like, if I'm doing this with, pardon, if I'm doing this with a meteor, what I can do is, you see how I can splay out my fingers so that I can create a nice little shelf for the poi to land on and everything. And of course, I can do that whichever direction I happen to be wrapping in and everything. But again, do you see how my palm is still open here as I'm making this catch and everything? Well, I have to look for the same kind of position when I'm doing my spiral wrap with my gunslingers. Namely, I have to be able to catch it in the palm of my hand. And the only way that's possible is if I'm not maintaining the death grip on the tether. Like, if I've got the right spacing here and everything, but if I do this from a fist, boom, there's no place for the poi to land. You know, it's conceivable that if I let out the tether enough here, it could get around to the point where it could land in that little divot between my fingers and kind of the meat of my thumb here and everything. But the downside to that is at that point, I'm literally gripping the tether midway through, and the gunslinger actually becomes a lot more difficult to keep going then, because for these unevenly weighted poi, you have to grip the tether closer to the head in order to make them more feasible, in order to come up with a decent spot where you can counterweight them and everything. So it turns out the solution to this really is that you switch your grip and just pinch that tether between your thumb and the meat of your hand. And as it comes around, you can just catch the head in the palm of your hand. Now notice that pinky end and everything is still just kind of hanging out there. It doesn't really need to do anything else. I mean, of course, if you wanted to, you could wrap it all the way around so you get a complete wrap and it's just kind of hanging out there on the back of your wrist. That also works. But truth be told, you just need to make sure that you've got wherever it happens to be as it's doing a pendulum and everything. If it just so long as you're going from a spot where it is swinging towards your hand, you can escape into the gunslinger here. So you can have that edge hanging out there and everything, and boom, no problem. Boom, no problem. Boom, no problem. Just go back and forth, chill out. You can go into some hybrids if you want to, and then decide you want to change your mind, what have you. Yeah, just go straight back and forth. When Ty pointed this out to me, I definitely had a moment of like, it cannot possibly be that simple. And it is. You just have to both get the right spacing, which I sometimes don't get because I go back and forth in my practice between 90s and 95s. And or actually, I think these are 97. Yeah, these are 97s. So because these are slightly bigger balls, I have to do the grip just a little bit further away from the head in order to kind of hit the sweet spot there and everything. But for 90s, you can grip a little bit closer to the head and still have it work. So thank you, Ty, for this tip, which I am still in the process of working into my flow, and you never know, might make it into a future flow video here and everything, yeah? Cool. So that is tip number one, how to nail your gunslinger suspension spiral wraps. That should be a name that I use more often, suspension spiral wraps. It's nice and long, and also, it describes a thing that I think is actually super useful. So, yeah. Anyway, so next up, we are going to talk about something else that is a hallmark of my style, namely hybrids that involve gunslingers. So this would be an extension versus gunslinger anti-spin. Is it 10-pedal anti-spin? I'm also a fan of doing a static spin versus 10-pedal gunslinger anti-spin, or isolation versus 6-pedal Gunslinger anti-spin. This one's really fun because if you take trails photography or video of it and everything, it looks like two triquetras that are stacked together because that's exactly what's happening. Both the thumb end and the pinky end are doing triquetras around that isolation and everything. But here's the thing. These are not the only hybrids using gunslingers that I know of. So for example, this is a 4-pedal anti-spin versus a 10-pedal gunslinger. I used to do this a lot back when I was training how to do 10-pedal gunslinger anti-spin versus 10-pedal gunslinger anti-spin. That is, being able to do these anti-spins and split time opposites and everything. I never do them anymore. Why is that? Well, let me show you another example of one that I can do, but I never show off. So this is a gunslinger in-spin versus a gunslinger anti-spin. Again, like a VTG style hybrid and everything. I can do it, but I never show it off. Not in my flow videos and not ever else really either. So the question is why? Well, the answer is, to be perfectly frank with you, I think both of them look kind of messy. That is, whenever you do a gunslinger flower, you're having to keep track of two ends of the poi as it's going through and everything. Now, this is pretty awesome, and it's something that people actually really, really like about singing gunslingers. They really, really like that they go so fast. They really, really like that there's two ends to keep track of and everything. But here's the thing. The human brain can only pay attention to so much stuff at the same time. So, like, if I'm doing an extension with that, an extension is really, really plain. There's not much to it. There's really only those 2 points that you got to keep track of and everything. And the shape that they create, I mean, it's kind of boring. Same with static spin. And that's the point. Now, if I do a 4-pedal anti-spin versus a gunslinger here and everything, yes, you can definitely track the fact that these two pedals are synchronized somewhat. But beyond that, like if I didn't tell you what this hybrid was, how many of you out there would be able to figure out for yourselves without like going back through this video and maybe watching it on watching it on slow mo or what have you? Whereas if I were to do this with both of the poi at full length, oh hey, that's a lot easier to sort out. Likewise, if I'm doing the two gunslinger anti-spins versus each other and everything, it's pretty easy to sort this one out. I can tell that they're both doing exactly the same thing, just in split time opposites. I can suss out the symmetry that's buried inside of this and everything. So here's the thing. Gunslingers are so complex that less is more. Recently I did a video on third order motions where, I've been playing around with Zan's diamond and all the different timing and direction combinations and everything. And one of those things that I think is really important to note about third order motions is I think that they're kind of the upper limit of what we can really do in terms of poi patterns that our audiences can keep track of and stay engaged with. In fact, many third order motions, like say if I were to do a true, what was I going for there? That was it. Yes. Goodness. So it's going to be, there we are. Okay, cool. So this is a third order triquetra versus a triquetra. Now, you can keep track of the fact that the core of this looks very triquetra-ish. And you can keep track of the fact that it's an antibrid. But if I asked you how many pedals were on that third order motion, I think a lot of you, again, would have to go through and watch this frame by frame to be able to figure it out and everything. And this, by the way, is not a challenge. It is more a statement of like, there's only so much attention that the human brain can hold in everything. So likewise, when we talk about gunslingers, if we're going to do a hybrid with our gunslingers, it's really important that the gunslinger is the most complicated thing in that pattern. Like, look how much more sense it makes to do the gunslinger versus extension versus the gunslinger versus a 4-pedal anti-spin. This looks so much more messy. It's so much harder to keep track of everything. Whereas the extension versus gunslinger, this has an effect to it. This has something that people can grab onto. Likewise, as I'm doing my static spin versus gunslinger here, because one hand is doing a very, very simple pattern, I can get more complicated with the other hand. It's the tension between those two things that makes this work. And also, it means that there's both enough going on here that it's exciting to the audience, but little enough going on that they're not totally confused by it. It doesn't look like complete gobbledygook. This is something that a rando can take a look at and be like, that looks cool. But doing the 4-pedal anti-spin versus Gunslinger, I just don't think so. I think it just winds up looking like gobbledygook. And likewise, the in-spin versus anti-spin Gunslinger. Like, this just straight up looks like the poi flailing around and everything. And, granted, with a little bit more practice, I could probably clean this up a wee bit. But I don't actually have high hopes that that's going to turn into something that people are really going to get a lot out of in terms of the visual effect of it and everything. Again, because gunslingers are really, really complicated. So as you're working with your own gunslinger flowers, go ahead and team them up with shapes that are simpler rather than more complex. And I think the results you get out of that are much more likely to be interesting for your audience. Of course, if you're of that ilk that just wants to learn all the things and check off all the boxes and everything, be my guest. But when you're going to do gunslingers for an audience, help your audience out and make sure that if you team them up with something, that it's something that is relatively simple so it doesn't distract from the gunslinger. Because the gunslinger is cool enough already, let me tell you what. All right, let me consult my outline once again here. And, yes, cool, that's what it was. So fun fact, I outline these before I do them, and sometimes I can keep my brain on the outline and sometimes I can't. So my final tip for you here also has to do with your gunslinger flowers, but it's a really, really subtle thing. I think a lot of people, when they first get into gunslingers, one of the things that is most difficult for them is figuring out, especially when they're doing it with poi that are not evenly weighted, how it is that they keep their pinky end moving. And a quick review here is that anything that functions in like a meteor context, we have a thumb end and a pinky end. Now, saying thumb end and pinky end does not necessarily mean that those are the fingers that anchor these two ends. It just means that these are the fingers furthest to either end of our hand. So we name the poi coming out, or just the end coming out to that side, after whichever finger is furthest in that direction, right? So when you get into doing gunslingers with contact poi, one of the hardest things to do is to keep that pinky end moving. It weighs so much less than the thumb end, number one. And number two, it's also one of those things that, it feels very much like it's flailing around, and we're used to having more control over our thumb end because our thumb end is where we start with poi. So this is, again, going to be a moment that kind of flies in the face of what I was talking about at the beginning of this live stream, where you have to maintain a death grip on your poi. Here's the asterisk in that. The death grip is really between your thumb and your index finger. Why is that? Because in order to keep that pinky side moving, you really have to think of your hand as being capable of kind of opening and closing with your pinky and ring fingers against your palm. Both of these fingers, of course, are controlled by the same tendon. It goes back into your forearm and everything. If those of you out there that play guitar will know that very frequently you have to engage both of these fingers at the same time. Some of us are completely incapable of not engaging them at the same time. Ironically enough, so I can do this whole thing with my right hand, but I cannot do it at all with my left hand. And one of the reasons is that the movement of these two fingers is a little wonky on this hand. So when it comes to controlling that pinky end, a big thing that you have to do is kind of like do this kind of come hither thing where you see how I'm moving my pinky and ring finger. It's almost like some of the illusions that you do with contact juggling and everything, where you kind of move the balls around in your hand and all that. You have to do the same thing with those two fingers in order to help you facilitate moving the pinky end of your gunslinger slash meteor here. Um, and if you look real carefully here, you can just barely see me doing it. I'm going back and forth between having my pinky and ring finger in a slightly open position before completely clamping down on them here. So they're somewhat open on this side, they're completely clamped down over here. And this is probably something that is going to be better served in slow motion, but I'll go ahead and do it just a little bit here in case it does help. This, of course, is super useful, again, for flowers because you have to make sure that the pinky end is leading the way I do it, at least over on my left-hand side here. If the poi is spinning clockwise in wall plane, you need to have control over the pinky end over on the left-hand side of your body. It's also just helpful in general. Of course, John Alvarez always used to teach this in such a way that you would start on your pinky end. And again, it's that whole thing of, it's almost just like tapping your pinky and ring finger against the palm of your hand in order to keep it moving. So that's a lot to balance because you have to maintain the death grip with your thumb and index finger while kind of doing the little slapping motion with your pinky and ring fingers here against your palm in order to keep things going. And of course, when you get over to this side of your body, the pinky and ring fingers are helping out your thumb and index finger. But also just know that as you're training this, especially with contact poi, there will definitely be a process where you're going to have to build up the strength in your hand to keep that grip and make the grip kind of feel like it's in muscle memory. So that is a process, and it was definitely a process that took a while for me. I would say that from when I started on Gunslingers and my goal when I started was to be able to get down these split opposite anti-spin Gunslingers. And from start to finish, training this probably 1 or 2 hours a day took me about 3 solid months. So yeah, good times. Anyway, so let's go ahead and start up the Q&A part of our evening. I'm going to switch back to a more direct ability to talk with you all as a talking head and everything. Again, thanks to UltraPoi for sponsoring Tech Tips. You can go ahead and grab a set of these orb poi from ultrapoi.com. Use the promo code DrexFactor with a 0 instead of an O at checkout. That lets them know that I sent you. It helps the channel out, and it also gets you a discount on your order. So please do it. And their orb poi are fabulous. These are definitely my favorite pair of LED contact poi right now. They are most definitely my workhorses, and I really enjoy flowing with them. So they come recommended. Also, DC is officially hitting summertime, so I think it got to 80 or 90 outside today, and in the interest of not overwhelming you all with background noise, I have turned my air conditioner off, but it means that I'm going to be sweating to the oldies all night. Yay! So if you have questions, please drop them into the chat. Feel free to also, so if anybody wants to, you can also support the channel with a super chat. That's that button that looks like a $sign. That comes straight to me. You can think of it as like a tip, and I will prioritize those questions that come through on super chat. Otherwise, I will just take them in the order that I get them. So whatever topics you have in mind that you want to ask me, go ahead and drop them into the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. Cool. Emily Lilly is saying hi, hello, hope everyone is having an amazing day. I'm definitely having an amazing day. Are you having an amazing day, Emily? Zuzi says, you don't to do another stream at another time. I don't speak English that well. I'm only listening, and when I understand, so it's good. Okay, cool. Zuzi was asking before the live stream started, or was saying that I'm willing to bet that Zuzi lives in the Eastern Hemisphere. Because of course, I'm starting a little late for all of you out there that happen to be in that hemisphere. I apologize. I suggested maybe doing these live streams like during the middle of the day on a weekend day to make them more accessible, but I guess Susie thinks that the way they are is fine, which is fine. Matt Timlin says, "Hey Drex, hey Matt, I remember you. How are things going?" Sarah Winters says, "Hey Drex, so glad I'm finally catching one of these live. They are a wealth of info, and I'm so appreciative of you doing it." My pleasure. Honestly, thank UltraPoi. They are the reason that I did this because the live streaming format is one that I have a really difficult time with. I'm much better with like I really really love planning out content, like writing it and you know kind of storyboarding, shooting and editing it and everything. So like doing live streams is tough for me. It's definitely outside of my comfort zone, and I don't think that I would have done it regularly had UltraPoi not come to me and been like, hey, we're happy to sponsor a live stream out of you. I was like, okay, shoot, I guess it's go time on this now. So I'm glad that you appreciate that it's happening. Please thank the wonderful people at UltraPoi for making that possible. Um, Leslie White says, I just got here and I'm in the market. In the market for what? Oh, I think this is answered in the next section here. Any idea why one pair of my LED battery operated Poi, I'm pretty sure that's meant to be Poi, runs out of battery when it's not even used? Yeah, honestly, so here's the thing. All batteries naturally discharge over time. Even if they're not rechargeable, if you just have a bunch of batteries sitting around for long enough, they're going to discharge for a variety of reasons. One of the biggest being that, the chemical reaction that happens inside of them that makes it possible for them to discharge electricity. It kind of degrades over time and everything. This is one of the reasons why you want to throw out batteries after a few years because they chemically start becoming inert. And it happens with lithium ion batteries too. I do not feel confident enough in talking about the science to tell you why, but it's just a thing that happens. My lithium ion battery powered tools definitely discharge over time. So anytime I want to pick them up and play around with them, I try to make sure I charge them full before I go to it because there's a decent chance that they need it. So it's just a byproduct of physics, unfortunately. Yes, and Lesia did correct afterwards saying poi, so I got that right. Hallelujah. Satori asks, what video would you recommend for learning the basic gunslinger? Well, mine, of course. Um, no, so I have a 4-part series on YouTube about how to learn basic gunslingers. And it is actually primarily taught with even weighted poi, which I almost never use. I use them in this case specifically as a teaching tool. Um, but yeah, use those videos. I put them together for a reason. I wanted more people playing around with gunslingers. So go check that out. You can do a YouTube search for Drex Poi and gunslingers, and um, yeah, that I think is the best resource. John Alvarez did a really really great tutorial a while back, but the scope of it is quite limited, and I think I just cover more ground in my own videos. No disrespect to John, I think his video is amazing and it's a really really fun video. But yeah, I would say watch mine. Teehee. Um, Mukmukpoira. Oh, I think I remember you. I've only ever noticed people do the normal entrance into a gunslinger. Do you ever use the reverse entrance? I don't know what you mean by normal and reverse entrance. So these are the entrances that I think of when I think about gunslingers. So John Alvarez would usually teach people what I like to refer to as the reverse slide entry, which involves letting the tether go over the back of your hand and catching the tether on the other side as it swings underneath your hand. This takes you straight into a pinky end lead gunslinger right here. Let me get a little bit closer to the cameras in doing this here. So it slides under and you catch it. Yeah. The other wrap entry, of course, is you try and wrap around, or the other slide entry, I should say, is you let the tether go around. In many respects, it's basically the same entry. It's just whether your palm is up or your palm is down. So this is basically like the palm up slide entry. The one that I favor is what I call the wrap entry. I learned it from Cryptic Firecat, which involves doing 2 coils of the poi tether over the top of your hand, and then you release the handle, and as it swings around, you regrip the tether. It's kind of hard to do in slow motion, but when you do it at full speed, I think it looks amazing. Should also be said that it is a 2-beat entry. All of the slide entries are single beat entries. So depending upon the rhythm that you want to have with your poi as you're spinning them and everything, sometimes the slide entry is a good one, and sometimes the wrap entry is a good one. I don't see as many people doing the wrap entry. I think probably honestly because it really is a challenge to get down. It's incredibly hard to understand what's going on there without like having slow-mo footage of it. But I mean, those are the ones that I have seen people using. If there is another type of entry, I would love for you to tell me about it, because I am totally here for playing around with more of these, definitely. All right. Lesia White says, I want contact poi USB charged. Right here, right here. Orb poi, USB charged, straight up. Nate Morris says, hey Drex, can you explain a little more about how you enter your gunslingers from a static position? Also, fun fact, Nate Moore, even though it's spelled differently, you have the exact same name as a good friend of mine from college. From a static position. So, not entirely sure what you mean by that. So when I think of there being a static position, I think it's kind of two options. One is that you're starting from right here with the poi just being inert. And the way I think of that as happening is that it's basically just a variation on the slide entry. And you're kind of going from, really what it is it's almost like a G-pop where you're pulling up on the poi, but you're pulling up on the handle and you're just grabbing the tether as it comes up and everything. From there, your challenge is to get the poi working. This is definitely one of those places where that workout that I was talking about, where you get your pinky and ring finger involved, is super helpful. But that would be one option for a static entry that I could think of. The other option would just be from like a static spin, I guess. And again, if you're talking about the wrap entry here, I'll get a little bit closer so you can see the mechanics of this. So tether goes over my hand once, tether goes over my hand twice, yeah? Now from here, I kick out the handle, and as the two ends are going around, I catch the tether on the other side. Again, 1 coil over, 2 coils over, and I kick out my handle, and as the two go around, I catch the tether, yeah? At speed, it looks like this, and for my money, it's the coolest way to get into Gunslingers, straight up. Other people may have a different opinion on that, though. Good question, though. Oops, that is not what I meant to do. There we go. Okay, I didn't screw anything up. I do have to transition over here. Okay, sweet. And I'm back. Cool. Lizzie White says, like, within a few days, the battery runs out. I mean, so you probably need to replace the battery then. Like, especially lithium-ion batteries, after a certain number of charges, lose their capacity to do it. I do actually understand the physics of this one, but it would take a long time to explain. And the long and short of it is that you basically have these honeycombs of lithium atoms, and you're passing electrons back and forth between them. And what will happen over time is that the electrons will get stuck in different places in the honeycomb and unable to work them loose. So they lose their capacity both to charge as well as to let electricity flow back and forth in that honeycomb. Um, Lithium ion batteries are actually really, really cool. And now there's the process by which they're trying to come up with like high density rechargeable batteries is fascinating to me. There's a YouTube channel called Real Engineering where they did an entire series about trying to improve the life of rechargeable batteries. Um, and it's just it's quite extraordinary. I'm a big fan, um, and I learned a lot watching it and everything. But yeah, suffice it to say, it's electrons going back and forth in a honeycomb of lithium atoms, and yeah, they get stuck after a while, unfortunately. So it sounds like you need to change the batteries, unfortunately. Sonic Hill says, as an electrical engineer, I can tell you the science, but I don't want to bore anyone with it. I feel you. Go check out Real Engineering. That dude has awesome explainers on things like this. Nate Moore, also, would you mind doing a quick bit on straitjackets? Oh, God. I realize you have made tutorials on this before, but this live setup is very cool. Well, also, spoilers. That's what this Friday's video is going to feature. Um, God bless it. I really, really, really hate doing straitjackets. Okay, so what is a straitjacket, dear friends? Well, it's basically a crosser with bragging rights. Oh, goodness. Hi, Kurt Hobbs showed up and left a super chat of $100. You're amazing, Kurt. Thank you so much. Hey, Drex, I really enjoyed your time bomb flow video. Keep up the great content. I definitely will. And thank you, Kurt, for the amazing super chat. That means so much to me. Um, yeah, I really, really appreciate it. If any of the rest of y'all want to get on that train, I would also appreciate that too. But no pressure. All right, so what exactly is a straitjacket? Well, okay, as I'm doing a crosser here and everything, notice that I'm basically doing shoulder reels, going back and forth, and in so doing, my arms are crossed, right? Now, here's the thing, is that, like, my arms may be crossed, but they're not entangled. Like, I can easily exit out of this, or I can do extensions around and everything. I'm not in a place where my arms are trapped necessarily, right? Um, Now, you can think of this also as being kind of analogous to what's happening in a 3-beat weave, where when I put a hand on top, that is an opportunity for me to switch it into a crosser, to just stay in that place where my arms are engaged in a place where they're crossed over each other. Straitjacket is different. Straitjacket is also just a 2-beat reel with each hand. The difference is that now my hands are entangled. This is the reason it's called a straitjacket, is because it puts your hands in the position and arms in the position that they would be if they were in a straitjacket. Your arms are like a pretzel, right? So I have my right arm going over my left and then coming back around over so that my right hand is on top of my left biceps, but it is under my left wrist, and my left hand is under my right biceps while my left wrist is on top of my right one. Confused yet? Oh, it gets better. So crossers are one of those moves that, like, it's one of those things that you can do this and basically engage minimal effort in it. Like, I'm putting a little bit of wrist energy into this, but otherwise, not a whole lot's going on here. It's mainly that I'm controlling the movement from my body center. So straitjacket, you have to get into it like you're going for a barrel roll, like one of these and everything. So you're already in a place where you're kind of crossing up parts of your body. And you basically think of this as almost like you're threading a needle through something that you're trying to stitch together, and you're gonna really quickly pull up your arms close to your body and try and keep the poi moving. Now, there's a reason that I switched to the sock poi here, and it's because they're longer. It is much, much easier to do this with longer poi, ironically enough. So as I'm threading them through, I have to do this thing where I get the poi right up close to me, and I have to keep them moving around in those reels. And it's hard because I can no longer engage my wrists in keeping this movement going at all. It's completely down to my body movement. So it's a huge challenge, especially for somebody like me who I have like short arms proportionally for my height. For people who have longer arms, I have a feeling that this move is a lot easier to both to get into as well as to keep going. But I have to really, really, really work hard to keep this one going. So consequently, I almost never do it. But it basically is a crosser. You're just doing it from a position where your hands are completely immobile, and that makes it a huge challenge. Um, but yeah, spoilers. I have a video coming out on Friday that is going to feature straitjackets. So that's now twice in a month that I've had to pull those out of storage. So yeah, hope you ho- ho- hope you enjoyed that one. Um, yeah, so that was more than a quick bit. Skylar G says, "Bring back Alvarez." From what I understand, John is perfectly happy to be out of the limelight now, and I respect his space, and I hope everybody else does too. He is a lovely, lovely human being, and he has definitely earned some time to himself. Leslie White says, "Sonic Hill, it's just one of the poi, the same one, the other one lasts long. Just the one, huh? I wonder if there's a short in it. Interesting." Skylar G says, "Do you ever get too depressed to spin?" Um, I have a complicated answer for that because I have made no secret of the fact that I suffer from clinical depression. I have major depressive disorder. Mood disorders are an interesting thing because, a lot of people, everybody experiences sadness and depression at some point in their lives. What makes it different when you have a depressive disorder is that, like, people will get depressed when they like lose a job or a relationship breaks up. But having a mood disorder is really weird because your brain sets off that same process and there's no trigger for it whatsoever. I have been honestly dealing with low grade depression this past week, and it's made it difficult to get work done. But it's not one of those things that I'm in any immediate danger of self harm or anything like that. It it's more like just I have I call it inertia, where it's like difficult for me to get moving, but once I do get moving I can get stuff done. So I tend to plan that around knowing that I have to build up that inertia and everything. So it becomes one of those things that it's just like, okay, so it's going to take me an hour to build up enough energy to you know get up and go do laundry or something like that. So while I'm up doing laundry, I'm also going to make sure that I wash the dishes, because if I have enough energy to get moving, I need to stay moving for as long as I can. Um, Part of having major depressive disorder is that I had to learn a long time ago how to keep on doing things even when I did not get any dopamine or serotonin response from doing them. Um, like for a lot of people, when you get something done, when you cross something off your to-do list and everything, there's a little surge of dopamine that comes with that. When you're dealing with depression, that doesn't happen. The state that you're feeling both before you get the thing done as well as after are almost exactly the same. And it's kind of like a numbness in many respects. Um, so because of that, I learned a long time ago how to do the things even if I was getting no dopamine response from doing them. Um, so the short answer is that no, I've never been too depressed to spin, but it has been difficult for me to spin many, many times. Um, it's been very, very difficult for me to build up the inertia to go spin. And there have absolutely been times when spinning hasn't given me any kind of feeling of satisfaction, any dopamine kick, any serotonin kick, or anything like that. That has happened many, many, many times. But I keep telling myself to do it anyway, because I know that because I have a mood disorder, I also know that the lack of positive feedback doesn't mean that the thing isn't serving me. I still get out and exercise. I still go running. Even when I don't get the dopamine kick from doing it, I still do it because I know that it is, in the long run, it's going to help more than harm. Um, and, quite frankly, if I didn't do things when I got depressed, then I just wouldn't do anything at all. And as somebody who's self employed, that's kind of not a luxury that I have. I have to keep the trains running. And so I learned a long time ago how to keep them running, even when I didn't have I received no sense of gratification from getting them done. And this is also a thing too that I really, really take issue with a lot of people in the community who have this kind of idea that, like, oh, you just need to find your bliss and then your depression will go away. I'm doing my bliss. My depression is still here. Actually if you actually have a mood disorder, you've got a mood disorder, and your your way out is not to find your bliss. Your way out is to learn how to manage it. And that is going to be the same process whether you are doing the thing that you're passionate about or whether you're working in insurance. And I'm sure there are people that are, really passionate about insurance, but it's the best example I could bring to mind. Um, so this is a long answer for what's a really short question, but I think in other people, if it were other people, yes, I would get too depressed to spin. But because I have trained myself to keep on operating without reward feedback, no, I never get too depressed to spin. I make myself do it anyway. Take from that what you will. Mukmukpoira, if normal entry goes thumb, back of hand, palm, thumb, reverse goes thumb, back of thumb, palm, back of hand, back of thumb, thumb, if that makes sense. So thumb, back of thumb, palm. Oh, wow. No, I've never tried that before. Whew. That's an interesting idea. Oh, okay. So that puts you in a position where you wind up with the handle on your thumb end, correct? Check my work here. Because if that's the case, yes, I actually have done that, but I really, really dislike having my handle on my thumb end, so I don't do it very often. Nate Moore, so send, thanks. You're welcome. Mcmuck. So normal will enter on not native in forwards, and normal will enter on non-native in forwards and native in backwards. Reverse and I do not understand that note. I might have to come back to that. I'm sorry. Satori says, thanks, Drex. Love John Alvarez's video on Gunslingers, but I definitely love how in-depth your videos are. Why, thank you. Gonna have to check out your series and put in some practice. Yes, that's what we like to hear. Also, Kurt, thank you again for the super chat. I love that it's still hanging out there. Zach asked, do you ever pick up your stabs anymore? Yes, I do. Hey, Skylar G, thank you for the $5 super chat. Thanks, Drex. I appreciate all that you're doing. Your flow circles on Patreon are fantastic exercise. Thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing that. Yeah, I just recorded next month's flow circle videos this past Wednesday. So be on the lookout for those. They're coming. For those of you who don't know, so I have a reward tier for my Patreon. If y'all want to go check that out, it's patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi. There's a reward tier called the Flow Circle. The Flow Circle is basically, this came out of getting feedback from people that they wanted to learn how to spin poi, but they didn't have the time to practice. So the Flow Circle is a 5-minute video that gets posted every week. And in that 5-minute video, I give you a drill that you can do for 15 minutes a day to improve your poi spinning. And I cover a lot of different topics in there. But the July topic for the Flow Circle is every week I will give you a new 15-minute drill that you can do that will polish up your anti-spin flowers. So check that out. I'm so glad you like it, Skylar. And y'all should also check it out too. Um, Zach asked, "Do you ever pick up your stabs anymore?" Very, very rarely. I don't know. It Every time I pick up another tool, there's a thing that goes through my head where I'm just thinking, "Oh, this is going to take time away from poi," and also too, like running a channel full time. Like I have a video up every single weekday on Instagram, and I put up 3 videos a week on YouTube. It is a lot. Um, and it doesn't leave a lot of time, unfortunately, to do other things on the side that are flow related. Pardon me. Sorry about that. Um, so I haven't picked up my sticks in quite some time. I did a little bit when I was installing the prop wall and everything, but I didn't play around with them for very long. I never got to the point where I could just like spin stabs on autopilot, unfortunately. And maybe that's a goal for the future. But no, I haven't. I pick them up very rarely, unfortunately. Kurt Hobbs, love lacing is a good way to get in and out of straitjackets. Not love lacing, but barrel rolls. Love lacing is a different thing because love lacing topologically means that you can separate your hands and you don't have a tangle. Barrel rolls means that when you separate your hands, you've got a tangle. And here's the thing, a straitjacket is a tangle. So you actually cannot get into a straitjacket from a Lovelace, unfortunately. It can only happen from a barrel roll. I say that, and watch, somebody's going to post a video now doing it. But my current understanding, you cannot get into a straitjacket from a barrel roll. You could probably get into a crosser from, or you cannot get into a straitjacket from a Lovelace. You could probably get into a crosser from, hang on, I'm going to do it now. All right, so from a Lovelace, down, but down, but down. Yeah, that's actually pretty easy. From a love. Nah, they don't tangle there. They don't tangle there. Unless somebody wants to post the video and prove me wrong here, which I'm also totally down for. Matthew Emerson says, "That's an awesome trick. I can't wait for that video." Excellent. Lesia White says, "I too had major depressive disorder." I feel you. Pristique is my lifesaver. Yeah, I'm not medicated. I have been treating it through exercise and therapy, and honestly, trying to be transparent with the people around me too, which is hard because I don't always realize that it's sneaking up on me until there are a couple of things that are red flags that I'm used to seeing that tell me, oh yeah, here it is. But yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to know that it's happening until it's here. Um, Jason, old school raver ethos. Just keep dancing, no matter how hard it gets. Yeah, there you go. Kurt Hobbs, have you ever considered using an Oxbow Meteor? Yeah, actually. So the guy who invented puppy hammers, a good friend of mine, Charlie Cushing, and many, many, many times, Charlie and I have traded props. He has tried to get me serious about puppy hammer many, many times. I still call it puppy hammer because I think it's just a better name. It's a more fun name. But inevitably, what happens is I'll give him a set of my contact point, and he'll give me his puppy hammer, and we'll like go to opposite ends of a room for like a half an hour and mess around with each other's toy. And after that half an hour, we'll come back and we'll give each other our toys back and everything. And I'll just be like, well, I mean, it's okay and everything, but I can't do a lot of the stuff that I'm used to. Like, I can't do any contact poi tricks. I can't do any tosses or anything like that. And Charlie would be like, oh, I can't do all of the puppy hammer tricks that I'm used to. Like, I can't do you know, the contact staff inspired stuff, and I can't switch into the long meteor form and everything. So, yeah, I've played around with it, but it didn't stick. Yeah. And nothing wrong with that. Sometimes a tool is a good fit for somebody and sometimes it's not. Jason says, thanks, Drex. You're welcome. Mukmukpoira. Yes, that's right. Okay, cool. I'm glad I got that right then. Yeah, I have played around with that variation on it. Yeah, just handle and on thumb end. I've never been a big fan of. You know who? God, back in the day. So there was an afternoon that Tim Goddard and I spent. God, this would have been probably 7 or 8 years ago, sitting around messing around with gunslingers, and the way that he found that was most comfortable for him to get into them involved the handle end on thumb end, and I could not wrap my head around it for the life of me, because like I had these gunslinger tricks I really wanted to teach him, and because he was doing handle on thumb end, he was dealing with a whole completely different set of challenges. So the our ability to go back and forth on that stuff was unfortunately quite limited, but yeah, it was still fun to play around there. Thank you again, Skylar. Mukmukpoira says it's quite a bit harder, but you miss half the possible entrances without the reverse entrance. Yeah, it's true. It is definitely true. Yeah, I don't know. I tend to think less about the entrances as I do like what's the gunslinger trick I'm trying to get to, which is interesting because I think a lot of people with gunslingers focus on the entries. The entry to me is just kind of a means to an end, and a lot of the tricks that I know how to do with gunslingers, it really, really pays to have the head on thumb end, which is not to say that there's not stuff to learn that goes the other way. Yeah. McMcPoyra says, I never actually do gunslingers. Okay. I just remember jamming this about a decade ago on nunchucks and handles, very high with a friend. I see. Yeah. No, I've played around with it, just not in a lot of depth. Skylar G asks, have you ever tried juggling? Poyer clubs, anything else? Yes. I I can just barely juggle three balls. It's not pretty. Can't do it for very long, but I can do it. And it when the circus craze hit the flow arts here, how many years ago was that? I want to say it was like 8 years ago, maybe a little longer. When the circus craze first hit here in the US, everybody learned how to juggle, and I very, very begrudgingly learned how to do it too. And again, it was just one of those things, it's like, this is going to take time away from poi. And then when the poi juggling thing took off, yes, I did spend some time trying to learn how to juggle three poi. I got to the point where I could flash three poi, but I couldn't do a full juggle. And yeah, I just kind of lost interest at that point. I think that was about the time when I got super into gunslingers too. So I was just like, there's a trick I really, really want that involves gunslingers. And there's nothing I'm super jazzed about with poi juggling. So yeah, I just didn't take it any further than that. And I've seen some awesome poi juggling out there. It just is not a thing that I felt any special need to learn. But that might change too. You know, I remember when the juggling tech first hit the poi world, and it was the same thing. I looked at it and I was like, I mean, that's cool, but I don't see anything that I really want. And it wasn't until a few years later, and I remember, I think it was AOE Kondo posted a video of himself doing an anti-spin flower with gunslingers, and that was the moment that I'm like, oh, that I want. That I want. And I had to go catch up and learn how to do it and everything. But I haven't had that moment with poi juggling, not as of yet. So yeah. Kurt Hobbs, I stand corrected. Okay, cool. So I was gonna say, if you can do a Lovelace into a straitjacket, post that video. I want to see it. Absolutely. McBoy Ross says, never thought about a Lovelace crosser, but I think it is distinct from a crosser and a straitjacket. Yeah, yeah. So there's three moves that all look so much like each other when it comes to those kind of inverted moves and everything. There's Lovelaces, there's barrel rolls, and there's a third option that never ever received a name and is extraordinarily hard to do. And if memory serves, back in the day when I was talking about this with Alien John Muck, he was specifically talking about how you were the one person that he'd seen had done a video of or maybe not done a video, but he'd actually seen you do it, of that third option, and you could actually keep it going. And to this day, I have never ever seen anybody else who could keep it going, keep it sustaining and everything. Lovelaces are relatively easy to keep sustaining. Barrel rolls are a little bit trickier, but the third option, and the difference between them is that like it's which end is leading. And I did a video on this, so go look up the video because I show all of these in slow motion. But so when you're doing a barrel roll, you're essentially operating in a place here where with my lead hand, it is my poi leading, and with my following hand, it's my hand leading. And that makes it so that to keep moving here, I have to keep the momentum on the head of my lead poi here. I have to keep kind of pushing the head around and everything. It makes it it's not impossible to sustain it, but it is difficult. Now here's the difference with a Lovelace. With a Lovelace, when you like stall that poi head before it comes around to your wrist and everything, you wind up in a place where on each side it's your hand leading and the poi is following. This makes it so it's not that hard to keep it sustaining. And here's the thing, that third option, that's right, it is head led, which means not only can you like not pause in the middle of it, like there's no place where I can pause horizontally. This is kind of what the position looks like vertically and everything. In order to keep this going, you have to constantly be putting momentum on each head. It is phenomenally difficult. Whenever I perform it for like a video or what have you, what I usually do is I will just go from one side to one side, and I'm actually not going to try doing it right now because it's just a pain in the butt. But yeah, as you're going side to side, I can hit it right in the butter zone going to one side, and then I have to recover, and then hit it in the butter zone going to the other side, and then I have to recover. I have never been able to sustain it, just straight up. It's a huge challenge. But Muck Muck apparently did it back in the day. Poi lead? Yes, poi lead. Yeah, I have a pretty good memory for these things, thank goodness. Muck Muck says, it is an odd feeling, but you do half of it with a normal barrel roll. It's just practice to make it sustainable. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I try to not make a habit of saying things are hard, because when you say that, it instantly like it throws up this block for people where they're just like, oh, if it's hard, like, you know, I don't want to learn that, or you know, it creates an expectation around it. It's but this is just straight up hard. It's really difficult. Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, I don't think I can do it anymore. Yeah. There's a link to an old bad quality video of it in continuous split op inversions. Oh my God. Okay. So I'm going to take these last two questions and I'm going to wrap it up because I've been going for a little over an hour here, and I want to go eat dinner. If you want to throw one last question into the chat before that happens, please do so. Sonic Hill asks, what is your view on Black Girl Hoopin's world record attempt? I am so here for it. I love Nicole to death. We're good friends. She refers to me as her social media husband, and she, my social media wife. So we have a really similar philosophy in terms of how we engage in social media, and we talk a lot of shop about it. She's an incredibly smart woman. And I think her world record attempt is awesome. I'm trying to swing it so I can actually fly out there to support her on site and everything as she's working on it. But yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I love the fact that she's taken on that challenge. I love why she's taken on that challenge too. You know, we don't have a lot of visibility on our Black Flow artists, and she's not only bringing more visibility to black flow artists, which in itself is great, but like, you know, she's also bringing a lot of a lot of visibility to body types that don't get seen a lot in the flow arts either. And I think both of those things are awesome. Um, so I'm all here for it, and if I can, I'm going to go out and support her in person as she makes her attempt, which is happening on June 19th, um, which of course is a perfect day for it. And if you don't know what Juneteenth is, go and Google it after I get done with this live stream, because it's actually a date that I think we should be celebrating regularly. Yeah. Kurt Hobbs asks, can you demo the contact roll versus isolation move you use? Contact roll versus isolation? I think I know what you're talking about. Maybe. So if you're talking about what I think you're talking about, you're talking about, hang on, this bit of business right there, which is not technically an isolation versus contact roll. It's really a static spin versus contact roll. But yeah, it's me synchronizing the two of them together because as I was working on my contact rolls, I just had a moment where I'm just like, if my poi are working in split time same direction, I want them working in split time same direction the entire way around, even in the contact roll, which I fought for months and months and months to get them to synchronize like that. And it is one of those things that I legitimately think is not actually that useful. It's just kind of like a bragging rights thing. But hey, if y'all are into straitjackets, try this one on too. Doing your static spin versus contact roll. I think it was. I even though I know it's not that useful, I'm still very happy that I learned how to do that. And if you watch my flow videos very carefully, I try really, really hard to make sure that my timing and direction stays consistent in my contact rolls. Yeah, little Easter egg there for y'all. Al Fixstat says, yo, love your works, man. Appreciate everything you do. I appreciate that, Al. Thank you so much. Regard says, hell yeah. I have no idea in relation to what. I'm hoping in relation to Nicole's world record attempt, because that is my response to it too. And Kurt Hobbs says, that's it. Thanks. You are so welcome. Awesome, friends. So it is almost quarter past the hour here. So I am going to go ahead and wind this down here so I can go eat dinner and chill out for the rest of my Friday night. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I hope that you learned something. I hope that if you had a question, I answered it well. Skylar G is trying to get one in under the wire. Is it beneficial to practice different shapes and sizes of poi heads regularly? It depends. So I straight up think that different heads, and especially different head shapes, require different performance styles. And again, there's actually a video coming up on this. I'll give you all some spoilers here. A lot of people were super into my Reacts video where I reacted to Mel's fire spinning performance at Fires Festival over a decade ago. So the next video is going to be on G's performance at San Francisco DCOM, and specifically comparing it to his performance at Spin Festival the next year, because he used the exact same choreography in both cases. The first one was a fire, and the second time was with LED. That choreography works great with fire, not so much with LEDs. And I'm going to outline why I think that is in that Reacts video. I've already shot it, so yeah, I explain why that happens in that video, and that's going to be coming out not this coming Monday, but a week from that Monday. So be on the lookout for that. So I would say that if you want to learn different performance styles and what each of those shapes and sizes are good for, yes, absolutely, it is beneficial to practice different shapes and sizes of poi heads regularly. Totally. And if on the other hand you're only interested in like doing one style, which is totally fine, then you don't need to. Yep. Uh, Muck Muck says, "Oh my, that performance is my favorite ever." Which Mel or G? Because G's performance at San Francisco DCOM is one of my favorite ever as well. And it's funny because I feel like I took a lot from that in terms of how staccato my own style is, how often I do stalls and change timing and direction and everything. Much more so than Mel. Mel has a much flowier style than I do, even though I try and hit accents in the same way that he does. But at the same time, I'm also conscious of the fact that that staccato style works far better with fire than it does with LED because you can see the performer much better. But this is all coming in the future. So keep your eyes peeled a week from Monday for when I drop that Reacts video. Anyway, Beauregard says, that was it. Yay! Beauregard says, see ya. Muckbuck says, good night. And also from San Francisco DCOM. Yes, that is one of my all-time favorite performances as well, 100%. So, yeah, check out my Reacts video a week from this coming Monday. And thanks everybody for showing up tonight. Thank you for your lovely questions. Thank you to UltraPoi for sponsoring these live streams. Again, head to ultrapoi.com, grab a set of these Orb Poi. Use the promo code DrexFactor with a 0 instead of an O at checkout. That gets you a discount on your Poi, helps out my channel. Everybody wins. Thank you to both Kurt as well as Skylar for your very, very generous super chat tips / donations tonight. It means a lot to me. It really does. To all of you out there, have yourselves a great weekend, and I will see you again with another live stream next month. If you have any requests for things that you would like my tech tips on, let me know down in the chat or down in the comments if you're watching this after the fact. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night. Peace.